All right. So I started on my fitness journey when I was in college, and I took one kinesiology class. And after taking that class, I was sold. I loved learning about what exercise can do and benefit, and how it can benefit the body and how the body moves, and everything was so intriguing to me. So this is how I started my fitness journey. And here I am. I have now made a career of it and continue to grow and challenge myself with my new business. Today, I want you to get rid of the onlys, the should, the would language. I hear these words spoken by women when I talk with them about their fitness goals and past history with fitness. And I would venture to say that even you have said something like, well, I should have walked on my lunch break today, or I only took a 15-minute walk after dinner, or I only am lifting 5-pound weights. I could have done more. And so I would like to see folks working on getting rid of that negative language, because I feel like that is a barrier to getting started and being successful. Yeah, so same. I've even done it myself, and it takes a lot of work to work past that, but you can start today. So on your worksheet, if you have it, again, if you don't have my worksheets, didn't get the link yet, let me know in the comments. I'll make sure you get them. But I want you to fill in the blanks on this phrase, that I acknowledge these thoughts, but I choose to let negative thinking go and reflect instead on the positive steps that I'm taking to feel better and increase my energy. So I think it's important to acknowledge those thoughts, but also move past them and focus on a more positive way of reflecting on your exercise progress. Okay, so I appreciate you for showing up today, and you're here, you're taking steps, you're taking an action step right now by being here in this class to learn. Okay, why do you want to implement a regular fitness practice, or why do you want to add? Some folks I talked to before this workshop want to add in strength training to their routine. They're already doing some cardio, but not sure where to start with strength training. So why do you want to implement that element? Reflect on the reasons why. It's important to loop and connect to that why. And once you've identified your why, then you can dig even a little bit deeper. Maybe it's, some people might say, I want to exercise more because I want to feel better. Well, what in particular do you want to improve or feel better about? Is it increased energy? Is it building confidence? I was just working with a client this morning who was reporting to me that the level of confidence after just 1 month of some training sessions has increased exponentially for them. And that is wonderful. Increasing muscle tone, getting stronger, building or rebuilding muscle strength. So think about those examples and maybe identify not only with your why, but also just a little bit deeper on your why. Connect it to you a little more. Keeping those things in mind, let's start to focus on a principle. So the next step of action can sometimes be a little overwhelming, right? It's like, where do I start? What do I do first? What's the best thing to do for me? Or what's the right thing to do? Lots and lots of questions come up next once you've identified, okay, I do want to do this. I know why. Now what? So I want to offer the FITT principle to you, and it's the FITT VP principle, but I just call it the FITT principle. And this is a principle of fitness that's a foundational tool you can use to structure and focus on your fitness plan in a more pragmatic, sort of objective way, right? So it stands for frequency, intensity, time, type, and then volume and progression. So frequency is how often are you going to exercise? Intensity is that level of difficulty, thinking about light, moderate, or vigorous. And then time is the length of your workout. And then type is simply what type of exercise are you doing? Cardio, strength, yoga. And then two more are the volume and progression. We'll go over those here in a little bit. But this principle can be really helpful in planning and structuring your workouts. Excuse me. So we're going to talk about intensity and time, because these two can tend to be the most useful tools when you're looking at planning your workout and what you're going to do. And so intensity and time are interchangeable, and that is a really good thing. Let's see, I'm going to try to pull my notes here together. All right, here we go. So intensity, like I said, light, moderate, or vigorous, that is the simplest way to think about it. And most folks, when you're just starting out, you see information about high intensity interval training being the best thing for fat burning, for weight loss, for everything, but it is not the best workout for everybody physically, right? And it can be unattainable for a lot of us. And so what I would offer is that you can start at a light intensity, and we'll talk about how you can maybe work up a little more, but it doesn't mean that you have to work at that high intensity to get the most benefit and to get for your workout to be effective, okay? So I get asked a lot, do I need a heart rate monitor, things like that. Certainly those are helpful, but what you could do is simply use the talk test. The talk test is a very simple tool. All you need to do is, can I talk while I'm working out? If so, then you're working at the right intensity. If you can talk and sing, not saying that I can sing, but think about in terms of if you could sing a song, then you might need to push a little harder. If you can't talk, then that is too hard, right? So you want to be able to talk during your workouts. You want to feel a little winded, but still be able to talk, right? That's the moderate intensity zone. And that is a great way to measure your intensity, super simple. And then type. Cardio, bike riding, dancing, are cardio. And then balance, that's a type of exercise. Flexibility training, range of motion, mobility training, resistance training, right? So those are all important types of exercise that you can consider incorporating. And when you're deciding on what type to start with, I always say, choose the one that you think sounds the most fun, right? So some folks might not appreciate or enjoy exercise, but find something you've either done before that you're familiar with or something that you have found fun in the past. Now, of course, you might need to venture out to try new things, especially like that resistance training element. But that's a good thing to work towards, but start where you're familiar if you're just beginning, and then move towards trying some new things after you've established some habits. You can stack on those new ones. And I'm sorry, I said for intensity and time earlier. I was talking about intensity and type. You guys know, you can see it on my slide. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit more into that intensity factor here with a pro tip. So, yep, I think the talk test is the best tool because everybody has access to that one, right? The next best tool would be to check your heart rate. And you can use your smartwatch and pay attention to what zones you're in. So if you have a smartwatch, then you'll see it'll give you zones. And this picture kind of shows what that looks like. And it'll tell you and give you that feedback if you're working in what zones you're working on, right? So, yeah. Now, we're going to talk about the elements of, let me see, it's two other elements here. Catch up on where I am. Two more elements we're going to talk about today, and that's volume and progression. Volume, we're not going to go into too much, but basically it's the total amount of exercise that you're doing. So it is literally like a mathematical equation. The number of sets, number of reps, and amount of weight that you're lifting, that total number is your volume. Don't get too hung up on that one right now, because again, that's one that we can dive into more later. But progression is an important one. And this is how your program is progressed or advanced over time. So it can be progressed on multiple levels. So the first level to think about, that's the simplest way to think about it, is exercise time. And so you would start with, for example, 10-minute exercise bouts, and then you would progress up by 5 minutes each week, adding more time. Okay, so another example would be in strength training. Say you are doing seated leg exercises, for example, then you can progress to doing chair stands. Then later you can progress to doing squats without the chair. That's another example. Or increasing the weight you're lifting, or lifting at a slower pace. There's so many ways to progress, but the good news is that the thing to remember today is that progression is there. So you do not have to start at the top. And you don't want to start at the top. You don't want to start at the high intensity interval training level. You don't want to start with the heaviest weight. You don't have to have the heaviest weight. And that will, because you want to progress up slowly. Progression allows you to do exercise safely. Progression allows your body to adapt and for you to realize the benefits and changes over time. And progression allows you to customize and individualize your plan as you go. I already kind of went over this, right? So that chair squat to weighted squat. Adding weights, adding load is a good way to progress. That's another key element when you're starting new exercises, to not use any weight or any load, no hand weights, no bands, no dumbbells, anything like that, and practice the movement, getting the technique down, getting your body used to that movement first, and then adding load or weight as you get used to it. Okay. And I already reviewed the time, and then there's the intensity factor as well. So, and then in terms of type, an example of progression is to start with an exercise that you're most comfortable with, like I said before, and then try progressing to a new exercise. All right. Goal setting. This is so important, and maybe just as important as the FITT principle. Flexible goal setting. So you may have heard of the SMART goal, and you may have seen this picture of this lady. This is going to be me. I don't know how many years young this lady is in this picture, but I know that is like a life goal for me right there. To have hips that flexible at that age is amazing. So anyway, goal setting should be flexible. If you have heard of the term SMART goal before, then you may be familiar that goals should be specific, measurable, attainable or achievable, realistic, and time bound. Okay. And so those elements are all important, and you may already know about those. That may be sort of like, yeah, we've heard that already, Gwen, but I would add, and I'd argue that we need to add the element of flexibility. Not physical flexibility like this young lady in the picture, but flexibility in terms of our planning our goal out, right? So that it is a goal that we can attain regularly. Okay, so I want to talk about flexibility a little more, and I would suggest that your goals should be short term. That's all I would say to focus on right now. So setting short-term goals such as 1 to 2 week long goals. Because again, when you're starting out with exercise or adding a new element, you can feel overwhelmed in thinking long-term about where you will be, where you want to get to, what that will look like, right? So that can be a little overwhelming and sometimes cause us to not start at all. So setting a short-term goal, having a short-term plan, however you want to look at it, would be a really good thing to try. So flexible goal version of a goal would be, I will walk my dog 3 times a week for 30 minutes, either over lunch or in the evenings for 2 weeks, and then reassess my walking schedule at the start of each week, planning for a makeup workout. So what often happens is we'll set a goal and then life will happen, right? So many times I'm working with my clients and they will share, they'll follow up with me and say, okay, I did not do any more exercise like I said I would because XYZ, because this happened, because that happened, and the week got busy and all these things, right? So that's where this flexibility in your goal becomes very useful, okay? Because if life happens, which we know it will, it's unpredictable, but we do know something's going to happen, right? It's just how it is. So instead of having this more strict goal where it's not able to bend and flex to meet our needs as life happens, we should set a more flexible goal so that it is more amenable to changes, and so that we can stay on track and ultimately feel successful, right? Because after we've accomplished our goal 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in, that's when you start to say, hey, I'm reaching my goal and I'm being successful and I'm going to keep going. And that's where that motivation turns into habit. And then you have a fitness goal or fitness routine that is a habit. All right. So we're literally assessing these goals every week and resetting the goal each week. Okay. Excuse me. If you have this short-term goal, it is easily adjusted, okay? So clients who exercise in the morning are more consistent, but if morning doesn't work for you, that's okay. But just a suggestion there that, maybe the time of day isn't working out. If you do set a goal for the week, you don't accomplish all of the exercise sessions, maybe it's the time of day you chose. So you can have that flexibility to change your plan for the week. And then frequency. So maybe 1 week you're able to do 3 sessions, but then you're looking at your next week and you're saying, I'm not going to get 3 workouts in. This is going to be a little bit more of a crunch time for me. Then okay, you can decrease the frequency this week, but then the following week, try to work back up to that other frequency. So usually I'll recommend setting a range of exercise sessions for each week, right? So 2 to 3 sessions a week, instead of saying 2 every week or 3 every week. That might not be accomplishable. And then adjusting your intensity, because this part's important, because perhaps you need, perhaps on one hand, you need to do something with, you have less time. And so you need to still get exercise in, but you don't have as much time to do it. So you don't have 30 minutes, that's okay. Go for 10 minutes. Your body will still benefit from that 10-minute workout bout. And so consider that as an option. And you can increase the intensity if it's appropriate for you to do so during that 10 minutes, okay? And then another thought is to decrease the intensity, right? And focus more on restorative movements. This is something that I would recommend if you are just kind of having one of those weeks or days where you're not feeling up for doing your full out workout. Maybe choosing something like a restorative yoga video to follow, or some stretching exercises, or balance work. So you could choose a different type of modality or choose a different style of exercise for any weeks where you need to decrease the intensity, but you still want to feel successful in accomplishing your goals, right? Okay, cool. These are the ACSM guidelines. You can Google them. They are on your worksheets too. But keep in mind, this is not where people start typically. Depending on you, you may be working up to these goals, up to these levels over a period of months, right? Making changes every 2 to 3 weeks.